The year is 1199. In the gloomy ramparts of the Chalice Chabrol, King Richard I, the Lionheart of England, staggers forward, a bolt of iron protruding from his shoulder. Once invisible on the fields of Acre and Arsov, this warrior now leans on his sword in his final hour. His cloak is soaked in blood, yet he stands like a lion, refusing to yield, and a hush falls. Summoning what strength remains, Richard asks to see the crossbowman. The youth, trembling, confesses revenge. Richard's armies had killed his family. For the moment, the Lionheart seems a man like any other, confronted with the human cost of his legend. But in the last breath, the king does the unexpected. He grants mercy. Live on, and by my bounty, behold the light of day, he declares. Even as life ebbs from him, Richard's final act is mercy. This startling contradiction, the conqueror who bestows mercy in his dying moments, introduces a man who was at once a celebrated hero and a feared tyrant, an idolised knight, and an absentee king. Born in 1157 at Oxford, Richard Plantagenet was the third son of King Henry II of England and Eleanor of Aquitaine. From childhood he bore the ambitions of two great houses. His mother's inheritance, the county of Aquitaine in southwestern France, was granted to young Richard. By the age of 14 he was enthroned as Duke of Aquitaine. Tall, golden-haired and charismatic, Richard grew up beloved by Eleanor and was often considered her favourite son. But the Plantagenet household was a cauldron of ambition. Henry II planned to divide his lands among his sons, sowing jealousy. In 1173, Richard joined his elder brother, the young King Henry, and Geoffrey in open revolt against their father, encouraged by Eleanor. A contemporary chronicler called the conflict a war without love. The rebellion collapsed, and Richard found himself grovelling for mercy at his father's court. In the peace he retained Aquitaine, but was humbled. Eleanor herself was held prisoner by Henry as insurance of Richard's future loyalty. And from that day on, Richard would never again kneel before Henry as a child. The crown of England still felt generations away. In 1189, King Henry II finally died and Richard became King of England and Duke of Normandy. Yet he scarcely lingered in England. The fall of Jerusalem to Saladin in 1187 had set Christendom ablaze, and Richard declared he would lead a new crusade. He had only one ambition: to recapture the Holy City. He poured every royal treasure to that quest. Sheriffdoms, royal officers, and even lands were sold or mortgaged to buy ships and arms, and by 1190 he had assembled a formidable fleet and army. Sailing via Sicily, Richard carved a swathe through the Mediterranean. He conquered Cyprus en route and in May 1191 married Princess Berengaria of Navarre to cement his alliances. By midsummer, he stood with his knights before the walls of Acre. The siege was bitter, stones roared and disease raged. Even when illness laid him low, Richard fought on from a litter, picking off Saracen guards with a crossbow. And at last, Acre fell in July 1191, and the Crusaders poured in triumphantly. Richard had 2,700 Saracen prisoners from the garrison under his command, and seeing no future for them, he ordered their execution, a brutal act that stained his heroism with cruelty. From Acre, the Crusader host marched south along the coast. On September the 7th, Richard's forces clashed with Saladin's near Arsov. With the setting sun at his back, the Lionheart held formation as enemy horsemen circled. When a hospitaller charge broke the line, Richard gave the order and led a thundering downhill counterattack. His knights cut through the Saracen flank. The Muslim army shattered and fled, and Jaffa fell to the Christians. Twice Richard's banner drew near the walls of Jerusalem, only for fate to intervene. Torrential storms and broken roads stalled the march. Back in camp, quarrels erupted. Richard offended Duke Leopold V by stripping his banner from Acre, and Philip II of France grew ill and withdrew with many troops. In September 1192, Richard agreed to a truce. The Crusaders kept a narrow coastal strip and safe passage for pilgrims, but Jerusalem itself remained in Muslim hands. Richard's perils did not end with the crusade. Sailing home in disguise, he was shipwrecked on the Adriatic and trudged overland toward Germany. In December 1192, near Vienna, Duke Leopold V captured him. Leopold had long nursed a grudge. Richard had insulted him by ripping down his banner at Acre, and rumours linked Richard to the murder of Leopold's cousin, Conrad. The Lionheart was delivered to Emperor Henry VI and thrown into chains at Trifles Castle. The ransom demand was staggering, 150,000 marks of silver, roughly 2 to 3 times England's annual income. But Richard bristled, declaring, "I am born of a rank which recognises no superior but God." Back in England, Queen Eleanor and the King's ministers mobilised everything to pay it. Nobles and bishops gave up a quarter of their wealth, treasures from church were melted down and heavy taxes were levied. Even Richard's own brother John and Philip of France plotted to delay the payment. Finally, in February 1194, the full ransom was delivered and Richard walked free. During captivity, Richard poured his soul into song. In one bitter lament, he mourned feeling abandoned by kin and country. "No man who is imprisoned knows the songs of prison," he sang to his sister, that the proud king had been humbled. But once free, he wasted no time. He marched to London, compelled John to swear loyalty, and held a second coronation to wipe clean the stain of his capture. With England temporarily safe, Richard set out to reclaim the Angevin lands in France. Across Normandy and Anjou, the war horses thundered. He besieged castle after castle and even ordered a vast new fortress on the Seine, Chateau Gaillard, built atop high cliffs to guard the Norman vexin. The castle rose with feverish speed as if Richard himself had sketched the walls, so rushed that a chronicler noted Richard barely noticed an ominous rain of blood during its construction. The fighting brought glory and heartbreak. In 1194 at Fréteval, Richard surprised Philip's camp and carried off the French archives. In 1198, he won again at Gisors, planting his banner and royal motto on conquered French soil. But by 1199, the Lionheart was growing weary. In March, he ravaged a Limousin estate, devastating the Viscount's land with fire and sword. Not long after, he laid siege to a small castle at Chalice, where fate intervened. On March the 26th, peasant archer's bolt struck Richard's left shoulder. He laughed it off at first, but the wound turned gangrenous. The Lionheart lay dying in a field tent. His final act was quietly profound. He demanded that the boy who shot him be brought forth. The youth was trembling and expected execution, but Richard listened as the boy confessed to avenging relatives killed by the king's men. The dying king's eyes softened, and at the end the Lionheart became merciful. "Live on, and by my bounty behold the light of day." Richard whispered, granting mercy with his last breath, and soon after, on April the 6th, 1199, Richard's great heart finally stopped. Richard's death closed the final chapter of a life written in fire and steel. His body was laid to rest, the heart in Normandy, entrails at Chalice, and flesh at Fontainebleau. While his banners flew inverted in mourning, he had conquered many lands, but he had scarcely set foot in England. In 10 years as king, he spent perhaps 6 months on English soil. His endless wars and exorbitant ransom had drained the treasury and burdened the people. In that muddy churchyard, a king was buried whose legend was already larger than the land he left behind. After his death, Richard's legend grew even greater. Troubadours and chroniclers cast him as the ideal knight. Songs told of his courage at Arsuf and his merciful words at Chalice, but history's mirror is double-sided. Medieval accounts on both sides of Christendom admitted his daring. Saladin's own chronicler wrote that Richard's charge at Jaffa was the very image of a king riding death along the line, and his brutality, the execution of thousands at Acre, the ruined Norman towns, testified to a darker side of his fame. In the end, Richard is a study in contradictions. He was lionized as a hero abroad and barely known at home, a crusader king to one generation, an absentee ruler to another. His bravery is unquestionable, but so is his ferocity. His fame is immense, but it came to a crushing cost to lives, to lands, to his own kingdom. This is the tale of Richard the Lionheart, a man who strode across continents with sword in hand and left echoes of his roar in every land he touched. He embodied valour and cruelty, absence and renown, ability and bloodshed in equal measure. The Lionheart saga is at once inspiring and cautionary, a legend forged in blood that reminds us even the mightiest heroes cast long shadows.